Well, it's also been reported that communication between former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn and a Russian official in the U.S. was intercepted by European intelligence services. However, that's also according to sources who reported it to the media on condition of anonymity. Well, we spoke to former intelligence officials. They believe the U.S. agencies wield too much power.
Well, I hope what it happens is that the president starts to clean up the intelligence community for being, so corrupt and politicized, basically. You need to have a professional, disciplined intelligence process that will produce intelligence for the decision makers to make decisions. You can't have them do things for political reasons, like weapons of mass destruction in Iraq or the Tonkin Gulf affair in Vietnam. Things that didn't happen were claimed to have happened or to be there, and that caused a lot of conflict and war and a lot of people getting killed. You can't afford to have that happen.
It really is, I think, in this case, a clash of the titans. It's a heavyweight fight, bare-knuckle fight. And yet the people who are actually briefing against President Trump, which is unconscionable if you think about it, surely are by the very definition committing treason. So it is flagrant hypocrisy. Very few presidents ever try and take on the American intelligence community, although, of course, they should have, because they have been flagrantly breaching the terms of the Constitution, as we know from Edward Snowden, for over a decade now. So, yes, they should be held to account. And Donald Trump did say, before he was actually even elected, that if he were elected, he would clean out the CIA. He would replace the leadership. He said that they were too politicized, too close to the government. And, of course, that very closeness and that politicization had led them to make some appalling errors.
Well, the fallout of Michael Flynn's resignation has been all over the mainstream media. But they seemed unsure exactly why the now former National Security Advisor had to resign.
So it sounds like you think the issue is the leaking, not the constant contact, as it was described by CNN and the New York Times, with Russian operatives.
Well, I think that if this is constant contact, I'd like to see some evidence.
And as Emily Sue reports, evidence seems to be the last thing on the media's radar, especially when it comes to a new Trump scandal.
Russia, Russia, Russia. No matter how vague, no matter how empty, as long as you put this magic word next to Trump, it's gold, at least for some U.S. mainstream media. This sensational headline was published by the New York Times on Wednesday. Citing unnamed officials, the authors admit they have no idea what was actually said in these supposed phone calls between Trump aides and Russian intelligence officials. They also got no evidence to prove any colluding between Trump and Russia. But hey, don't know, don't care. Trump's there, Russia's there, boom, damage done. Within an hour, CNN cited their own anonymous sources claiming the same thing.
High-level advisors close to then presidential nominee Donald Trump were in constant communication during the campaign with Russians known to U.S. intelligence. This is according to multiple current and former intelligence, law enforcement, and administration officials.
If you're not sure, that's fine, as long as you throw in the words allegedly or reportedly. It's all good. But it wasn't these Trump campaign aides that took the biggest hit. National Security Advisor Michael Flynn gave up his job because of his ties with Russia.
This isn't just sort of a casual violation of the Logan Act. This is sort of a direct and, maybe even treasonous activity.
He just decided to call the Russians up one day and say, we're going to have a different view on sanctions. Don't worry about it.
Whoa, criminal phone call with Russians. Wait a minute, was that the reason he quit?
Whether or not he actually misled the vice president was the issue. And that was ultimately what led to the president asking for and accepting the resignation of General Flynn. That's it, pure and simple.
If you think their clarification is enough to stop mainstream media from spinning the Russia mill, think again.
I didn't speak to Russian officials during the campaign. And what Trump and Trump's officials seem to have done instead here was have regular contact with them over the course of the campaign. That's what's so unusual about it.
People are just repeating this, and they don't know why. They say, Russia, 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 Flynn was talking to the Russian ambassador. And without thinking, more people than you can imagine are repeating this sense of sabotage. Russians lurking about. You could say The Russians, the Russians! You could have said the Italians or the Vatican. It could have been anything else. Because there is such a frothing hatred for everything that is Trump. The mainstream media hate him because he is shaking up the status quo. He wants to change everything. Do you know what happens if all of a sudden somebody were to remove Russophobia? What this does to the defense industry? If you remove a potential boogeyman, if you were to change the climate of fear, what this means?
Paris has been hit by fresh riots, with hundreds rallying against police brutality, which they claim is fueled by racism. Angry demonstrators set off flares and chanted slogans at officers. Well, the unrest follows an alleged incident that happened 2 weeks back. A 22-year-old black man was stopped for an ID check before he claims being brutally raped with a baton by 4 policemen. One of the officers was charged with rape, but his lawyer later claimed it happened by accident. RT Charlotte Dubinsky has been following the latest protests in Paris.
It's the elephant in the room in France: race. Society here is divided. The denial of tensions is creating even bigger problems. And they're coming to a head once again.
It's a political problem, and we should find a common solution.
Smile works for the police union, but has asked us to conceal his identity.
There's an identity crisis, and no one can deny this observation. There's an identity crisis that's still developing. We can see how certain communities are becoming increasingly detached and isolated, predominantly in those suburbs. We have to carry out serious educational work and instill French values in these areas. We should work with the state institutions, representatives of syndicates and other associations to find a solution.
These latest protests were ignited 2 weeks ago when a young black man was subjected to a routine ID check. What happened, though, left him in need of emergency surgery for internal injuries. He's accused the police of rape and racial abuse.
These claims have picked at the scab of an old wound here in France, one of police brutality, with officers being accused of using excessive force in poorer neighbourhoods, particularly against young men from ethnic minority backgrounds.
It's more than a decade on from the violence that swept through France in 2005 over police brutality. But protesters say things still haven't improved.
We create this situation all over the world. There is racism, inequality, police brutality. This is not okay. We're in the country of human rights, but who cares about human rights?
This behavior seems so unfair to me, racist towards the population. I think that this behavior is condemned by the government constantly, but nothing is really done to change how certain police officers act. I think politicians should do more about it.
What the police have done is a huge abuse of power.
From his hospital bed, Theo has called for calm, but the protesters aren't listening. Authorities now fear escalation as the outrage over Theo's case continues to spread across the country. Charlotte Dubinsky, RT, Paris.